This MMORPG is called Corepunk and it was launched 6 months ago in early access back in December 2024. And it seems like everyone has forgotten that this MMO even exists. If you take a look at the Twitch numbers, barely anyone is streaming the game on a Saturday weekend. If you search for Corepunk on YouTube, you'll barely find any content creators making videos for it. And finally, if you log into Corepunk right now and visit any of the towns in the game, you will not see a single player online. This game was dead on arrival. And considering that no other YouTuber or streamer wanted to talk about what actually happened to this game leading up to the official launch of Corepunk, I'm going to do that. But I am warning you guys, I will sound like a whiny little bitch complaining about this game, because, well, how could you not? The MMO genre has been dead for years. Corepunk, announced back in 2019, was actually one of those MMOs that people, including myself, believed had a lot of potential. The world design and atmosphere looked visually impressive for a top-down MMO. It had a large open world filled with different monsters, giving the impression of a deep and explorable game. They also had a pretty cool fog of war system, where you never knew who you might run into, and anytime you step outside the boundaries of the map, you would hear this.
This is closing in.
This is closing in. This is closing.
Come back, come back, come back, come back, come back, come back.
The game featured a full crafting and gathering system, where you could chop trees, mine ores, and craft using recipes found throughout the world. There were multiple unique classes to choose from, each with their own set of abilities and playstyle. And knowing it would have a combat system somewhat similar to League of Legends or Albion Online, things were starting to look pretty good. I think it's safe to say that Corepunk, before launching, had a positive reception overall, and more people than ever were looking forward to playing it. But somewhere along the way, things started looking really bad for this game, especially as developers kept delaying almost every single playtest. I remember watching a video from Kira TV, back when they used to cover MMOs, and by 2020, they were already planning to have an open beta. These guys were masters of overpromising and never delivering, because the cycle of delaying updates and upcoming playtests just kept going on forever. At that point, it was clear to me that Corepunk was stuck in development hell. One of the obvious reasons for this was the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which made things more difficult for the team. They mentioned having an office in Kiev, but also one in Amsterdam, and that most of the developers had already started relocating to the Netherlands. So it seems like that didn't stop them from continuing development, and as usual, if you have been following this project for a while, you would know that they kept going silent for several months at a time, before finally posting another update. At a certain point, people finally started to express their frustration toward the developers at Artificial Core, not just because they were constantly delaying updates and upcoming playtests, but also because they were actively ignoring a lot of the feedback players had raised. The best example I have is from the first public alpha test recap. Players talked about how rough the early game experience was and how badly it needed improvement, but that didn't seem to matter, especially when they made the decision to remove the forums from the website, effectively wiping out any feedback that had been posted prior to launch. They deleted all conversations and community discussions, along with many of their older articles. Do you know which game this reminds me of? New World. It reminds me of Amazon Games doing the exact same thing with New World. They had a forums full of feedback and discussion threads, only to remove them a few weeks after the game had launched. This seems to be a very common pattern among developers, and with Corepunk specifically, they had to remove the old stuff as it was time to prepare for a Corepunk release. Eventually, they stated that they wanted to enter early access as soon as possible, mainly because they had been working on this game for 10 years and they needed to pay the bills. Now, at first, that sounds very honest and transparent, right? But when you actually think about it, it just proves how badly they had mismanaged the entire project. I became very skeptical after that announcement, and so did many other players too. It felt like they were willing to take a risk by prioritizing short-term financial gain over long-term trust, possibly releasing a game that was far from finished. They had gone so deep into development hell that their best shot at recovering financially was to launch the game in early access with a standard edition priced at $30. They had also launched the game outside of Steam, possibly to maximize their profits and avoid negative reviews. And finally, that's exactly what they did. They released the game in early access. However, that also meant that Corepunk was shortly going to be dead on arrival. They spent whatever money they had left on a massive marketing push, trying to sponsor as many content creators as possible. This included streamers and YouTubers I had never even seen before, people who had nothing to do with MMOs. And as usual, every sponsored YouTuber or streamer is incentivized to make the game look as good as possible, even if they don't actually care about it. But there's only so much you can do with sponsorships, especially if your game is full of problems. People will eventually realize when your game is broken, and that's exactly what we all got to see. We're talking invisibility bugs, where you literally couldn't see your own character, main quests that couldn't be completed, forcing you to stick to side quests or farm mobs for hours just to gain experience, item duplication glitches that let players exploit and ruin the in-game economy, getting stuck in random places on the map with no way to escape, and tons of other game-breaking issues that made it completely unplayable, forcing people to reinstall or even delete their characters just to keep playing. Now, bugs and glitches aside, the game also had an incredibly tedious and punishing gameplay loop that just wasn't fun to play. Almost every quest in the game was designed around either collecting certain items or killing specific mobs. With no quest markers, slow movement speed, and bad quest descriptions, you had to waste hours trying to make progress, because most of us had no idea where to go. It felt even more punishing knowing that you had barely any health or mana regeneration. After every mob encounter, you were forced to set up a campfire or eat specific food, very much similar to an MMO like classic WoW, but in Corepunk it was way slower by comparison. You could even fail while trying to gather certain materials, which only meant wasting even more time. And finally, for a game that called itself an MMO, it was just missing too many of some of the most basic features, like not being able to form a guild or run a dungeon with other players. I made a video on the same day Corepunk launched, criticizing and explaining why the state of the game was so bad at the time. Now, I know I could have made a way better video, but at least compared to other YouTubers at the time, I was honest. I showed a side of Corepunk that nobody else wanted to. Despite that, I received so many dislikes and hateful comments on the video, simply because people didn't agree with me. And knowing how stagnant this entire genre is and how desperate MMO players are for something new, it honestly didn't matter what you said. Any kind of criticism or feedback about Corepunk was completely dismissed. Why, you may ask? Well, because even if you show how broken a game is on screen, players will still find a way to make excuses for anything that is labeled early access. And as always, the same players who defend a broken, unfinished product are the first ones to leave the game once it actually comes out. I guarantee you that all those fuckers who left hateful comments and defended Corepunk with their own lives are not even playing this game anymore. And if you still think that the state of the game wasn't bad enough, well then let me tell you about the server shutdowns. Just shortly after Corepunk launched, the server started going down, leaving players completely unable to play the game. They would bring the servers back online, only to shut them down again 2 hours later. This cycle went on every single day for over a week. And in every announcement they had posted, the clown emoji became the most common reaction, because people were obviously pissed about the situation. It meant that players who thought they were finally getting a new MMO had no idea they were buying a game that at the time was completely unplayable. It's such a dirty practice to let new players buy into your MMO when the servers are clearly offline. And you can only imagine the chaos on the subreddit because people were asking how to request for a refund. Now 6 months later, this is the result. I can barely find anyone in the game to play with, even on the European servers. It's literally a ghost town. No one talks about this game anymore. Barely anyone makes videos for it, and it's almost never streamed on Twitch. I think most people who had followed this project and sort of seen all of this would absolutely agree with me that Corepunk was a complete disaster. Many players left the game almost immediately and never came back. It was the worst first impression you could possibly give to anyone trying to play it for the first time. In my opinion, this was a mismanaged project from the start, and they probably had no other choice than to try and release the game in an unfinished state anyways. They were most likely running out of money, and like they had said earlier, they had to release the game as soon as possible. But I mean, that is also the reason players no longer want to trust this company. Sure, these guys made some money, but how are they now going to convince all those players to come back to the game? Now, to finish off the video, I actually wouldn't mind playing Corepunk today and making a follow-up video for those people that want to know if they actually done any improvements in the last 6 months. And so, if that is something you would want to watch, well then make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And as always, thank you guys for watching the video.